In previous worksheets, we've been able to do a lot with the equation of a line. So we've talked about standard form of a line. We've talked about slope-intercept form of a line, horizontal and vertical. We've talked about finding slope and y-intercept from a line. We've graphed lines. In this worksheet, we're going to focus on how to get the equation of the line. So we're not going to have the equation of the line given to us. We're going to be given enough information to then find the equation of the line. So we're going to talk about something called point-slope form of the equation of a line. So just as a quick reminder, we've talked about a few things already. We've talked about standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. We've talked about slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. We've talked about horizontal lines. Those are of the form y equals b, where b is the y-intercept. And then we also talked about vertical lines, which are of the form x equals a, where a is the x-intercept. So now we're going to introduce a new form of a line called point-slope form, and it kind of says what it is. You have a point and you have a slope, and that's enough to get the equation of the line. So as far as the definition is concerned, the point-slope form of the equation of a non-vertical line with slope m that passes through the point x1, y1, so you have to have 1 point, 1 slope, is going to be this right here. You have the variable y minus y1, which is the y coordinate of your point, equals m times x, which is the variable, minus x1, which is the coordinate from your point. So x1, y1 are coordinates from an ordered pair. X and y are just variables. Okay, so let's talk about how to use this. So for topic 1, we're going to focus on using point-slope form to write the equation of a line. Okay, so you have to have two things, period. In order to get the equation of a line, you have to at least have a point and a slope, or enough information to get a point and a slope. So we're going to start out with just having flat out a point and a slope of a specific line given to us. Now, as far as the steps used to find the equation of the line, we're going to replace x1 and y1 in the point-slope formula that was listed above. I'll rewrite it down here in just a minute. So we're going to replace x1 with the x-coordinate from the point. We're going to replace y1 with the y-coordinate from the provided point on the line. We then replace m with the we replace m in the point-slope formula with the given slope. You then simplify and you can write your answer. Generally speaking, we're going to want our answer to be in slope-intercept form, but you could be asked to write your answer in standard form. Okay? So just so we have it sitting in front of us on the screen, we have, for example 1, find the equation of the line, write the equation in slope-intercept form. So once we use point-slope form to fill in the proper information, we then, excuse me, we then solve it for y and put it in what we call slope-intercept form. So just as a quick reminder, point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay? So that's the form we're going to use. So for part A, we've been given a slope of -8, and we're going to pass through the point -3, -2. So this is going to be our x1, y1 when we replace things into this point slope formula. Now, when we were talking about slope, I said if you write down the formula every time you use it, you'll remember it more often. So just write down the formula as is and then rewrite the formula, plugging in the proper information. Every time you write down that formula, your brain's starting to make a path to remember it. Okay? So I'm going to write down y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now I'm going to rewrite the formula, but this time I'm going to fill in the pertinent information. So we know that x1 is -3, y1 is -2, and m is -8. So I get y minus y1, which is -2, equals m, which is -8, times x minus x1, which is -3. Okay? So we want to simplify, and I'm going to start on the next step by just simplifying signs. Okay, I don't like that double negative thing. So y minus -2 is the same as y plus 2. And then inside this, the set of parentheses, I have x minus -3. I want to rewrite that as just x. plus 3. So technically, this is the equation of the line that has a slope of -8 and passes through the point -3, -2. But oftentimes we'll be asked to write our answer either in slope-intercept form or standard form. The directions here say write this in slope-intercept form. And when you hear slope-intercept form, you should automatically think solve for y. So if we can take this equation and solve it for y, we're good to go, but we want to fully simplify it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with the parentheses that are over here on the right-hand side. So I want to distribute my 8. So that's going to give me y plus 2 equals, well, -8 times x is just -8x. -8 times 3 is -24. So I'm pretty close. I have one more step to get y alone. The issue with y is we're adding 2 to it, so we want to subtract the 2 from both sides. And positive 2 minus 2 is just 0 on the left, so I get y plus 0 is y. And then the right-hand side, there's nothing to combine with the -8x, but I can combine -24 and minus -24 and -2, or -24 minus 2. Either way, I get -26. So this right here is the equation of the line. So this is the equation of the line that goes through -3, -2, and has a slope of -8. Okay, now you don't have to write that down every time. If the question says what's the equation, just write the equation. But I want you to have this in your notes so you know exactly what this is. Okay, let's look at part B. So part B, we have a slope of -2/3, and you will find with point slope form, dealing with fractions as the slope can be a little bit more involved. Nothing terrible. We've got lots of skills. We can do this. So we've got a slope of -2/3, and we're going to pass through the point 6, -2. So let's go ahead and label our point. We've got our x1 and our y1. We know what m is. So let's fill in the formula. And remember, if you write down the formula just as is, you're going to start to remember it. So write it down just as the formula is, and then rewrite it again, filling in the correct information. So we have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now we're going to fill in values for y1, m, and x1. So I get y minus y1, which is -2. Watch your signs. M is -2/3. And x1 is 6. So I'm going to get on the right-hand side -2/3, and then in parentheses x minus 6. Now I'm going to simplify a little bit in the next sign. I'm just going to take my, on the left-hand side of the equation, I'm going to take my minus -2 and I'm going to simplify that. But then I'm also going to distribute the -2/3 on the right. So on the left, subtracting -2 is the same thing as adding 2. So I get y plus 2. And then be really careful when you have a fraction that you need to distribute. You may have to do a little side work, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with side work. I need to distribute the -2/3 through that set of parentheses. So -2/3 times x, that's easy. It's just -2/3 x. But -2/3 times -6 might involve a little side work. So I'm going to take my -2/3 times 6 off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and write my 6 over 1, just so I have like a numerator and denominator to work with. So I got -2/3 times -6 over 1. Well, that's the same thing as -2 times -6, which is 12. And then 3 times 1 is just 3, but that all simplifies to be just 4. Okay, so -2/3 times -6 is really just 4. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and write it as plus 4. Again, the directions said write the equation in slope-intercept form, so I want to solve this equation for y. All I have to do now is subtract a 2 from the left and the right, and I'll be good to go. So again, to get y alone, I need to undo that addition of 2. So I subtract. 2 minus 2 is 0. Y plus 0 is just y. And then there's nothing to combine with my 2/3. I don't know why I wrote 3 halves. There's no, good grief. There's nothing to combine with my -2/3. So leave your -2/3 x, and then 4 minus 2 is just 2. So here we have the equation of the line that goes through the point 6, -2 and has a slope of -2/3. Okay, now at the start of this, I told you that you must have two things to get the equation of a line. You have to have a point and you have to have a slope. If you don't have those two things, you can't get the equation of the line unless you have enough information to get those two things. So what we're going to see in this next example is what would we do if we're just given 2 points on the line? So example 2 says, find the equation in slope-intercept form of the line that goes through each pair of points. Well, we have an excess of points, but we don't have a slope. But the good news is, as long as we have 2 points on a line, we can easily find the slope. So in a situation like this right here, we have to start by finding the slope, and then we take that slope and we pick one of the 2 points. It doesn't matter which one, and we can use that with the point-slope formula to get the equation. So let's start by finding the slope. So m equals, so we've got x1, y1, x2, y2, okay? And remember, in case you have forgotten because it's been a minute, the formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, okay? So let's fill in those values. So y2 is -5, y1 is just 1, so we get -5 minus 1. x2 is 2, x1 is -6, so we get 2 minus -6. So let's see what that gives us. So -5 minus 1 is -6. 2 minus -6 is really just 2 plus 6. Tearing it up today. So that gives me -6 over 8, which simplifies. Let's see, they're both divisible by 2, the numerator and denominator. So if we divide both parts of this fraction by 2, we get -3/4. So we have a slope and we have 2 points, and it honestly does not matter which point you pick. Pick a point. It doesn't matter. You'll get the same thing. I'm liking the way 2 -5 works, so I'm going to choose 2 -5. So we're going to use m equals -3/4 and 2 -5 in, remember the formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So write the formula down just plain and then rewrite it filling in the correct information. So for my x1, y1, I've got 2 for x1 and then -5 for y1 in this formula. So I get y minus -5 equals m, which is -3/4 times x minus 2. In the next step, I'm going to simplify the double negative situation that I have on the left, and then I'm going to distribute my fraction on the right, okay? So instead of subtracting -5, I'm going to write that as just y plus 5. And then I'm going to distribute -3/4, okay? So -3/4 times x is just -3/4 x. Now, off to the side, I'm going to do -3/4 times -2. You can do this in your head. If you're comfortable doing this in your head, that's fine. If you would rather do it on your calculator, that's also okay. But doing it on the side works as well. So I want to show you what's happening here. So we've got -3/4 times -2 over 1. Well, that just becomes -3 times -2, which is 6 all over 4. So it becomes 3/2. So not terribly ideal because now we're having to deal with some icky fractions, but we know how to deal with fractions. This is nothing to be alarmed by, okay? So I want to write this in slope-intercept form, okay? I need to subtract 5 from both sides. So ultimately what I'm going to be looking for is y equals -3/4 x, but then I've got to do some side work, okay? So I'm going to have to erase a little bit just to make some room. So I'm going to erase the side work where I multiplied my -3/4 times 2. We know that gave us 3/2, so now I've got 3/2 minus 5, okay? Now again, you might be able to do this in your head. That's fantastic. You may want to use your calculator, also fantastic. I'm going to do this on paper just to kind of remind you how some of this works. So what we need here is an LCD. The lowest common denominator that's going to work for us here is a 2, okay? So 3/2 is good. 5 over 1 needs to be rewritten. I have to ask myself, what would I multiply 5 and 1 by so that I get an equivalent form where the denominator is 2? Well, I would multiply top and bottom by 2. So that tells me I have 3/2 minus 10/2. Well, 3 minus 10 is -7, so I'm going to end up with -7/2. So my final answer, as ugly as it may be, is y equals -3/4 x minus 7/2. So this is the equation of the line that goes through the points -6, 1 and 2, -5. Okay? Let's do one more. This will be the last one for this particular video. So same directions. We want to find the equation in slope-intercept form of the line that goes through each pair of points. So let's find the slope. We have 2 points, but we have to have at least a slope and a point, so let's do that. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We've got our x1, y1, x2, y2. Fill the formula in now. So y2 is 4, y1 is 4, x2 is 5, x1 is -3. So I get 0 over 5 plus 3, which is 0 over 8. You have to remember, 0 divided by a number is fine. You can do that. 0 divided by a number is okay. It just equals 0. Now, remind me, what kind of line always has a slope of 0? Horizontal lines. So this line is horizontal, and we know that because the slope is 0. So you also have to remind yourself, okay, what kind of line would be horizontal? Well, it would have to go through the y-axis to be horizontal. It's not going to go through the x-axis, so it can't have an x, but it has to have a y. And so then you're like, well, what y? Go back to your ordered pairs. What y did you see occur in both of those ordered pairs? 4. So remember, these equations must have a y, but cannot have x. So we would just be y equals 4. And that's about as simple as it gets. So you really have to have a strong understanding of horizontal and vertical lines. What does that mean? Which axis can you touch? Which axis can you not touch? Horizontal, vertical, the whole bit. But you really, if you just think about what is going on here, you can do that. So when you have a 0 slope, it's either horizontal or vertical. Horizontal in this case. Okay, so you have to remember the slope is 0, horizontal line. The slope is undefined, vertical line. Okay? So get some practice finding equations of lines. Make sure you know how to do it when you have a point and a slope, but also make sure you know how to find the equation if you have 2 points.